Hi, and welcome back to another episode of Starship Gaming, and today we are going to talk about something very personal to me. My favorite games, or more specifically, my top 10 favorite games that I played during my childhood, or something like that. It'll work out when I type the title of this on YouTube. So, let's get started. Number 10, Quest 64 for the Nintendo 64. I ended up getting this game from a pawn shop for about $5 back around 2003, I believe, and it was actually really fun. And surprising enough, my dad got into this game. He's like, yeah, this game is the best game ever. And I'm like, Dad, it's just a 64 game, But why I put it on my list is I have so much nostalgia for this game. It was just that amazing. Number 9 on my list is Super Mario Bros. For the Nintendo Entertainment System, or the NES, or the NES, however you say it. You're probably saying, why is this number 9 on the list? Well, it was a big part of my childhood. Actually, it was the very first game I played. It wasn't a particular favorite of mine. I played it so much. It was the only video game I actually played for at least a period of 6 months at a time. And then, in the late 90s when I had a Nintendo, of course, if you've heard the infamous story about my parents selling my Nintendo in a yard sale, you would understand. But around 2003, 2004, I had rediscovered the original Nintendo, or the NES, whatever, and I started playing it again, and this was one of the titles that I played frequently, so it was a big part of my childhood. I also forgot to mention that I was born in the early 90s, so a lot of my childhood favorites are, a majority of them are late 90s, early 2000s, mid 2000s, so just so you know. Number 8 on my list is Mega Man 4 for the Nintendo Entertainment System. This was one of the games I played more frequently for the Nintendo, other than Super Mario Bros. I ended up getting this game at a thrift store back in 2003 for about $1.99. Yes, my memory is that good. I remember I paid exactly $1.99 plus tax for this game. Of course, that was during the days where you could get Nintendo Entertainment System games fairly cheap because nobody knew they were going to be worth anything. And of course, this was around the time when classic games were starting to have their return or revenge, if you want to say. And of course, this was, I put this on my list because it was one of my childhood favorites. A lot of nostalgia for this game. Number 7 on my list is Donkey Kong 64 for the Nintendo 64. This game I ended up getting at a yard sale around 2004. I paid, I believe, $7 for it from a kid who was just like, yeah, I'm tired of this game. I got a GameCube now. I don't need this. Ended up taking it home, played it, loved it. My childhood friend named Josh, he was obsessed with this game. He's like, yeah, this is the best game ever. And this was like about 2004, 2005, around that time. Of course, growing up, I loved to play systems that were out of date by that point. I had modern consoles at that point. I had a GameCube and an original Xbox. I didn't get a PS2 until 2006, which I was pretty late to that party, but But this one had a lot of nostalgia, and I had to include it on my top 10 list. It's just, everything about this game was fun. And surprising enough, it shocks a lot of people when I tell them, but when I was growing up, I never did play Banjo-Kazooie or Banjo-Tooie. I only had Donkey Kong 64, which is the closest encounter I ever had to those two games. Of course, being made by Rareware, now known as Rare. And I didn't get to play the Banjo-Kazooie series until I got a lot older. But Donkey Kong 64, it's the closest thing I ever came to it, so I have to include that on my list. Number 6 on my list is Disney's Dinosaur for the Sony PlayStation or the PS1. This game holds a lot of memories for me. I ended up getting this from a KB Toys back around 2001, I believe. It had been out for about a little less than a year at that point, and I saw it in a print ad, newspaper print ad, and I'm like, yeah, I gotta have that game. And I begged for a long time, and eventually my dad, we went to the mall one day, and he's like, I'm gonna take you to KB Toys, and I'm gonna give you, I think he said like $30 to spend. And I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna get a video game. He's like, why would you want that when you can have a toy? I'm like, video games are fun. So that's how I ended up with it. And to this day, I still own that copy of the game. I still play it. I actually sit down and play it about once a year. Every November, I take 3 days out of November to sit down and play it. And it just holds a lot of memories for me and a lot of nostalgia. Now we're down to the top 5, and number 5 on that list is Disney's Tarzan for the Sony PlayStation or the PS1. This game, there's a lot of memories. My mom was, if you've ever heard the story, I don't remember if I've mentioned it or not before on a past episode, but she was obsessed with this game. Like, I think she played it more than I did when I was a kid, but I used to watch her play it a lot. She mastered this game and beat the whole game in about 2 hours. Like, she would play this game every night for a long time, and I think that's why it holds a lot of nostalgia for me, is because of that fact. Seeing my mom play it and everything, and of course I played it a lot, and I never did get that far, but my mom, I don't know how she figured it out. She's not a gamer, but to this day, this is one of the few games that she still comes back to about once a year or something, and plays it, and it's just a lot of memories. And I actually remember I got this game for Christmas in, I think it was 99, I believe. But yeah, a lot of memories. Number 4 on my list is The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time for the Nintendo 64, or the N64 if you want to call it that. I ended up getting this game at a pawn shop. Probably the pawn shop I got most of my N64 games in the early 2000s from. I got it for approximately $5, and I had a childhood friend, and sadly he passed away years and years ago, and he loved this game. He absolutely loved it, and to be honest, one of his favorite parts of the game was where you could fish. But he was a friend that loved to play this game a lot, and every time I play it, I think about him. But I used to love to play this game. I could beat the whole game in a few days, and I go back to it every now and then. About once or twice a year, I go back to it and play all the way through. Of course, that water temple. Oh God, that water temple was awful. It was challenging. Of course, today, to me, it's not that challenging, but back then, even though the game came out in like 98 and I didn't play it till like 2003, it was still, a pretty advanced game. And like I said, with like the Banjo-Kazooie series, another one I never played when I was a kid until I got older was Majora's Mask. So Ocarina of Time was like the only Zelda game I actually ever did get into. So that one was a real, that one brings back a lot of memories. Number 3 on my list is Pokemon Stadium for the Nintendo 64. I had a friend named Greg in elementary school, and he owned this game. I had just got my Nintendo 64. I bought it used, if you've heard the story. And He brought this game over, and he's like, yeah, check this game out. And I'm like, I like Pokemon. I've heard of Pokemon Stadium. I've never played it. He's like, oh, you got to experience this. And we played it, and I loved it. And then I ended up going back to that pawn shop, my favorite pawn shop in the Nintendo 64 games. Bought it for $5 and played it. Loved it. I even had the team saved on there that I played from my childhood. And of course, the secret of Pokemon Stadium is to always include Jinx in your team. Number 2 on my list is Super Smash Bros. For the Nintendo 64. This one really made my childhood. Like, I don't even know how to describe it. The character I always chose about 99.9% of the time was Kirby, because Kirby was like the ultimate character you could pick in Super Smash Bros. And still is to this day when you really think about it. I remember I picked this game up at a pawn shop, and it was one of those fly-by-night operations. Now you may be asking, what is fly-by-night? It's a pawn shop that's there one day and then is out of business the next. Basically, this place was around roughly for 6 months and then just disappeared just overnight, totally unexplained. But yeah, I ended up getting this for $5 there. They had a couple of, I think I ended up getting a pinball game also for about $5 for PS1. But I remember I got this one, and it was around the summer of 2004. I remember distinctly because I went there to, here's the story. Story time, everyone. In the summer of 2004, my oldest brother was coming to visit from New Hampshire, and he was bringing his kids, my niece and nephew, and I was looking for something for them to play. Of course, my nephew was the only one who was old enough to play video games, so I was trying to find something he'd play. What I thought he was experienced in was PS1, because that's what I had. I had a PS1, and I had an Xbox, but, this was 2004. But I ended up, he had a PS2, my brother had a PS2, and my nephew, that's what he played, and I ended up getting a PS1 game, because that's all I had, a PS1, that's all he knew how to play was PlayStation. And I picked this game up, Super Smash Bros., and I originally was going to let him play it, but I decided maybe this wasn't the best one for him to play. Of course, this game I snuck and played, and if he knew I was going to do that, my nephew, he would have had a fit, because he was that kind of kid that just, went crazy if he saw something you were playing, and, he was like 5, and he would have went nuclear. He was one of those types of kids that, you go, oh, I'm playing this, and he's just the type of little kid that just runs up and grabs the controller out of your hands and says, mine, 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 like those seagulls from Finding Nemo. But I have a lot of nostalgia with this game. I ended up playing it a lot with my friend. I mentioned before, my childhood friend Josh. I had another childhood friend who passed away. We played this a lot too. And this game, just like all the other ones on my list, they hold a lot of memories. This one has a specific memory to it. And the number 1 game on my top 10 list of childhood whatevers, whatever we decide to call this, Mario Kart 64 for the Nintendo 64. Now, I know what you're thinking. God, there's a lot of 64 games on this list. And you're right. A lot of games I enjoyed when I was a kid were Nintendo 64 titles. And of course, I have a PlayStation. If you've seen my previous episodes, I'm crazy about PS1. I used my PS1 on a daily basis, still do to this day. But I didn't always use it to play games. I always used it to either play audio CDs to listen to music, and of course, I would, I'd alternate between the two, but, 64, a lot of my favorite games were on 64. Especially a lot of my childhood favorites. This was as the story begins, we stopped at a roadside yard sale. Me and my parents and I, however you want to say that. And there was a woman who had a bunch of old toys and stuff that her kids, who were like 12, 13 at that point in time. This was in 2003, summer 2003, by the way. And she's like, gotta get rid of this stuff. They need stuff for school coming in a few months and whatnot. And I seen this box full of toys, like stuffed animals and some Nintendo toys, which I should have got those Nintendo toys, but I didn't. I had other things on my mind as I dug into that box. So I walk up to this box, I see all these Nintendo toys, plushes like Mario plush, Yoshi plush. I see the Taco Bell toys that they released for like Nintendo 64 theme. So I dig into this box to see what I can find. So I'm digging through this box, and I start finding Pokemon cards. So I start pulling out these Pokemon cards, and I'm looking at them, and they are first editions. And not only that, I find first edition Charizard, first edition Blastoise, first edition Dinosaur, first edition Machamp, and oh god, it was amazing. And then I found a whole like stack or deck or something. So I'm pulling them out of there, I got a nice little stack going on. And then I pull up, I find another stack, and it's heavier than usual. I just take a big handful. So I'm going through the cards, and then I find a cartridge, and it was Mario Kart 64. So I'm like, Mom, get over here. And she's like, what? And I said, I want to buy this. And the woman's like, oh, those Pokemon cards in that game isn't supposed to be in there. I'm like, oh god, I'm not gonna get this, am I? And then she says, well, since my boys didn't go through that box thoroughly, I guess I could sell it to you. So my mom was like, how much do you want for all the cards and the cartridge? And she's like, I'll take $2 for all the cards you can dig out of that box, and I'll take $1 for Mario Kart 64. Now let me remind you, this was 2003, and this game was roughly about 6 years old at this point. Of course, today it's regarded as a high-dollar game, but back then, not so much. It was considered fairly common at that point in time, and out of date. But I continue digging through the box, I pull out more Pokemon cards, and I don't find any more Nintendo 64 cartridges. So we end up buying it. I go home, I play it. My cousin comes over, he ends up playing it. He totally failed at the Rainbow Road. And that's pretty much the story of how I got my copy of Mario Kart 64. And of course, me and my friends, we used to play this game a lot together. And about once or twice a year, I'll go back to this game just for the fun of it. It's that amazing. And of all the racers I played in the game, my favorite, I didn't pick Mario, didn't pick Donkey Kong, didn't pick anybody else. Yoshi. Always Yoshi. And in every time I played, almost every time. To be honest, he was one of the best racers in Mario Kart 64. And to this day, this is my most favorite childhood game that brings me the most nostalgia, more than any other game on this list. So I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and I hope you enjoyed hearing the favorite games, the top 10 games from my childhood that bring me a lot of nostalgia. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Hit the bell if you want notifications of when we do more awesome videos. And until next time, I'll see ya.